What's up, OptoFam? So this episode, we'll talk about what leadership means in the exam room and why it's important. So let's get to it. Hey OptoFam, so I know I recently talked about this in episode 4, but I want to recap that Johnson & Johnson Vision recently released a new website called jnjvisionpro.com. It's a destination for current ODs, future ODs, staff members, and patients for optimal eye care. And on that website, there are opportunities to directly ship contact lens supplies, artificial tears, and lid scrubs directly to our patients. In addition to that, there are resources to provide educational opportunities to staff members. There's also instructional videos for patients for contact lens insertion and removal training. And last but not least, there are marketing resources to help grow and promote your practice. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and check out jnjvisionpro.com to learn more and register for access. So I'm back in Arizona at the EI. I'm doing my internal rotation here at the school. Lucky for me, I'm living with the second year, so I have a place to stay. So let's go see, I'm gonna give you a tour and see if he's home. Oh, looks like he is. What's up, Carson? How you doing?
Get out of here. I'm busy. I'm studying.
All right, well, that didn't go as well as I thought it would. I'm just kidding, guys. This is Carson right here. He's a second year student. What are you studying?
Not really studying anything particular, just kind of getting ready for the week, making sure I'm prepared and trying not to be too stressed.
He's a hard-working man. So let me give you the tour here. The main lounge up here. This is where I do a little bit of studying for part 2. Got the TV, the PlayStation hooked up there. And then my room here, and I definitely brought that with me. Didn't come with the house. And guys, let's talk about some leadership and why it's important in the exam room. I'm having a good friend, Cameron Lowe, come out to talk about his take on leadership and why it's important. So let's talk about that. When patients come to see you in your office, it's so important to portray yourself as the person in charge, because you've gone through schooling, you've gone through all of this work, and now you deserve to make good choices for your patients. On my last rotation, it drove me crazy because I had this one doctor that for a lot of treatment options, he would just be like, well, we could do this or we could do this, which in some situations that is a possibility if there's a very equal balance, pros and cons for a treatment strategy. But in cases like refraction or prescribing glasses, if a patient, for instance, needs to be able to see at all distances, you need to be thinking of progressive lens. How are you going to know those things if you don't really dive too deep into the case history? You need to know, you need to put yourself in your patient's shoes and see, okay, which type of lens would be best for my patient. And it's not only true for prescribing glasses, but for all treatment options. Get down to the person's situation, know their disease, know their situation, so you know exactly if it happened to you, how you would treat yourself. So you need to be the doctor, you need to be credible, and you need to be, not only for your patients, but for the profession in general. I do want to talk about what John Maxwell is known for, and he's a very big advocate and author for leadership, and he wrote the author of Developing the Leader Within You and the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And according to him, the law of influence is that the true measure of leadership is influence. And no matter what type of influence, you are a leader. So even if you don't think like you have the best leadership skills, if you lead by example, if you do the right things and you're positive about it, people will follow you. People will pick up on that. So according to him, there's 5 total levels. The first one is positional, and that is when people follow you because they have to. This is the lowest rung of leadership, and people don't always respect you if they're only on this level with you. Number 2 is permission. People follow you because they want to. So you have credibility with your patients. This doesn't only apply to patients, but also with your colleagues as well. Number 3 is production, and that is people follow you because of what you've done for the organization. Number 4 is people development, and that's when people follow you because of what you have done for them. And the last and highest level of leadership is pinnacle, and people follow you because of what you stand for and what you represent. And so of course you're going to attain any of these levels of leadership at any point in time, depending on the situation in office, either with your patients, with your coworkers, or making a business deal, something. But what's important is that you establish yourself as a credible person, somebody that has good integrity and can lead people to a decision because of the knowledge that we have as eye doctors. And so it's so important, because if you ever want to do more than just prescribe glasses, if you want to do more than just be an eye doctor, leadership and people skills will take you far beyond what you could imagine when you were growing up. On a second note, I want to talk about the Harvard Business Review, and they talk about different characteristics of leadership that make people successful leaders. And the first one, and I agree that this is probably the most important one, is self-awareness. And you need to know what you're good at, what you're bad at. If you don't know, write it down. When you have a good understanding of yourself, you know which situations that you should speak up in, maybe situations that you shouldn't speak up in. And even in those situations where you don't feel like you have enough to say or valuable things to say, sometimes it is the right thing to do to be silent. But in other ways, it's an opportunity to grow if you do speak up in those situations. When you're a student in rotating through your internal rotation at the EI here, for instance, for me, when I think that there's a certain treatment plan we should start to do for the patient, even if the preceptor doesn't ask me, sometimes just to stretch myself, I'll want to go and just tell them what I'm thinking. And even if I'm wrong, like, I go in thinking I know I'm taking a risk, but I need to start thinking like a doctor and being that leader and managing my patient's eyes, because it's very important to get in that mindset now rather than later on. Number 2 in that Harvard Business Review is regulation, and this one is very important and something that I personally struggle with, and that's the practice of controlling impulsive decision making. As a new clinician, it's really hard to hold yourself back, keep your emotions intact when the hustle and bustle of clinic just is overwhelming, and making rash decisions sometimes I'll do just to stay on time. And it's very important that you allow yourself time to get in good habits so you don't make haphazard decisions in clinic. And I know it's very tough, it's very overwhelming when you have a lot going on as a new clinician, but it's important to self-regulate, not let your emotions get out of control. Don't be anxious, and try to get done on time the best you can, but make sure you do it correctly first, and that might take some time to get used to. The next one on that review is empathy. It's very straightforward, I've talked about this a lot, but just making sure that you provide the appropriate tone and the appropriate delivery of if there is a situation where you have to diagnose a tough disease. And the best way I figured out how to do this is to put myself in the patient's shoes and think about how would I want to word this to myself if I had to talk about, you know, retinitis pigmentosa or glaucoma or something serious like that. The next one is charisma, and this one is huge. A lot of people, this is there's a lot of gray area in this space, but you don't have to be an extroverted person to be a great leader, but you do need to have volume. So even if you're introverted, people don't like to hear a voice that they can't hear too well, because one, they can't hear you, and two, it shows that you might be a little bit in doubt or you're unsure potentially. But make sure that your patient can hear you, that you're articulate, and you're explaining the reason for the diagnosis and treatment. What I would say too is, from my experience, patients really don't like to hear any type of doubt in their tone, in your tone, any type of doubt in your description. If you haven't practiced your scripts on patient education, patients will pick up on that, and their loyalty and their respect for you could possibly diminish. So it's important to have those scripts down. The next one is cutting people off, and I know it's so difficult because when you have a lot going on, you have the next patient to get in your chair, you really want to just try to get the exam done with. But there is a big difference between cutting people off and cutting people off politely. And I've messed this up many times when I first started my third year. Sometimes I'll even still do it if I'm a little bit short on time. But making sure the patient finishes their train of thought and that you answer all their questions, because in the grand scheme of things, if you think back, if you cut somebody off a couple words before they end their thread of conversation, then it's only a couple seconds, which, you know, in a whole exam, you know, could take an hour, 2 hours, whatever. How much different does it make to cut someone off a couple seconds, right? So at the end of the thread, jump in to say something like, okay, now we're going to do this, or now I'm going to answer this question you have, or just transition to the next thing without interrupting what they're saying in the meantime. And it's really hard to keep yourself back because you wanna get that patient done with, and when times are tight, it feels natural to do that, at least for me. So guys, I just want to bring this round circle that overall you'll be a great clinical leader if you know your optometry and you create rapport with your patients. You know, make sure you explain why you are doing the treatment plan, why you're following up with them this many times in a row if they need to return to clinic. If you explain everything and you take the time, people will follow you. And above all, it's just really important to know your leadership style, know what you're good at, what you're not good at, and then keep progressing from there through trial and error. It's a very jagged experience. It's a very back and forth experience. Some days you'll be better at talking with patients. Some days you'll not feel so energetic, but you just have to make sure that you're as consistent as possible. And overall, guys, when you're a leader in the exam room, you are the eye doctor. You are the one making these choices, because if we're not in charge of our patients' eyes, then who is? What's up, Opto fam? So this is my good buddy Cameron Lowe. He's a fellow fourth-year student with me. He was a former president of the Envision Club, and today we're going to specifically be talking about leadership and what leadership means and how leadership actually looks in an exam room. So this guy knows all about leadership. He knows quite a bit about leading people and building good rapport. So Cameron, welcome.
Hello.
What do you think leadership is, and why do you think it's important? Maybe not in an exam room to start, but just in general, like everyday life. What do you think about that?
Well, I think I've been fortunate to have experience with great leadership in my life. My dad was somebody I consider a leader, and my older brother is as well. A leader is somebody who will speak for the group that they represent, or for an individual that they might be representing. They'll speak their mind. They won't keep their thoughts to themselves, in a respectful way, of course. But I think leaders also need to have a little bit of humility and not be completely arrogant or think that they're better than somebody because they happen to be in a position of leadership. They need to represent those that are below them. But I think a good leader really thinks that they're equal with everybody else and treats people with respect in that manner.
Absolutely. So if you had to kind of summarize, like, what specific values would you say, in addition to what you said, like, is a good starting point for people that are maybe trying to start with leadership, something that you've kind of learned maybe subconsciously throughout undergrad and optometry school, anything you've realized that's made you a great influencer or leader throughout your time?
I think that big thing with influencing people, or for beginning leaders, is just to treat everybody like they matter. People don't, there's a saying I've heard in school that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care about them. And I think that kind of means is you could be the smartest guy or gal out there and know all the answers, but if you're not treating people like a human or with respect like an equal, then they're not really going to want to be around you. They're not going to want to let you lead them. So I think knowing someone's name, as simple as looking them in the eyes, giving them a nice handshake and saying their name, really goes a long way with, especially initially when you meet a person. There's kind of this minute-long time when you pick up a patient and you bring them back to the exam room where you can't talk about any kind of health issues, and it's just kind of small talk. And I think that's everyone's key time to kind of make that quick connection with somebody, and you can do that in that amount of time just by figuring out, quick, where are you from, or where'd you come from? Oh, I've been there once, it's great, or oh, I've heard about that, or I want to go there. If you just show a little bit of a genuine interest, people will definitely listen to what you have to say.
That's a good point, and that's big for the initial encounter when, you know, both parties are trying to figure out, okay, like, who is this person? Am I going to relate well? And I think a good base of making a leadership connection with your patients is to have that rapport. And I remember when I first went through this, and you might feel the same way, but going through third year, I was always just focused on like what to do in the exam, like where am I going to start and like how am I going to finish. And I think that kind of interrupted the ability of rapport I could make initially. And it came off as ingenuine when later on I like knew what to do in the exam, and then I would start the rapport. So I think starting early, like you were saying, is really important. But if you feel like that it's the same way for you guys in third year when it's kind of robotic and like you don't know, you know, the good flow of things, then it's very normal to feel that way until you get that comfort of clinical experience. So I think that's really important. Have you noticed any type of like effective methods that patients like want to listen to you, whether it's like tone of voice, preparedness of like reading patient education, or ways that people like want to listen to you and come back to you later? Anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, eye contact is huge. You know, it limits their distractions. If they're maybe looking at their phone or something, they're probably going to put their phone away if you're looking at them right in the eyes. But I think educating the patient on why you're doing what you're doing as far as treatment is huge, because that solidifies, that shows the patient that you know what you're talking about. I think that shows leadership. As an eye care professional, we're supposed to know everything about their eyes and what to do for their problems they're having, and to have a reason for doing it, not just doing it because. You know, a lot of people think that sometimes we do things just for the money, the reimbursement aspect, and where in some instances, sadly, that's true. But if you educate the patient and say, this is what is going on with you, this is why that happens, and this is how we treat that, then they're A, going to be more compliant, and they're B, going to trust you more, which I think, again, to have a good leader, you have to have people trust you as well.
Absolutely. And it all comes down to just like keeping that reputation and that credibility while keeping rapport. You know, I think it's a good balance of having good social skills and like care for the patient, as well as convincing them and being influential in why you make the decisions that you want to make for the treatment plan. So I think it's all kind of conclusive in that way. When you're going to kind of give advice to maybe students that don't have much experience in leadership, whether they didn't have experience in undergrad, high school, whatever, even optometry school, it's not too late. But if you don't know how to start, it's kind of awkward. You don't really know like how to progress. So if you had to give like one or two pieces of advice to beginning leaders, what would you say that would be?
So my first piece of advice is really simple, and it's something that a lot of people don't do, but I've found that has made a big difference in my life as far as influencing people when I've consciously thought about it, and that's to say their name, repeat it out loud to them when I meet them, when I shake their hand. That helps me remember it as well, because sometimes I'm so focused on shaking someone's hand that I don't even listen to their name, it seems like. Mm-hmm. But if I focus on listening to their name and I shake their hand and I repeat their name out loud, it helps me remember it, and it helps them know that I know their name. And people love to hear their own name. It's everyone's favorite word in the English language is their own name. But that definitely instills some influence on somebody. It's like, hey, they remembered me personally. They know my name. I'm not just some person to them. But then I also think if you haven't had a lot of opportunities to lead, I think you just need to jump in and go for it. I think we all can be apprehensive and we all can doubt ourselves in any kind of arena in life. But I know I was questioning myself when I was contemplating leading the Envision, the private practice club, but I eventually just dove for it, even though I felt maybe a little unprepared. But I found that in the midst of it, and once I was in that role, I rose to the challenge and I was able to accomplish what I thought was a successful year with the club. So again, we're all kind of nervous to do things and we don't want to fail, but you can't be scared to fail sometimes. You just got to go for it. That's right.
Well said.
All right.
Thanks, bro.
You're welcome.
OptoFam, keep staying bold, keep staying passionate. We'll see you next time. I always like to start with a cheesy joke. Why did the smartphone need glasses?
I'm not sure.
Because it lost all of its contacts. Okay, let's get down to business.
Down to business now, okay.
My footage is cut out, so we'll have to try to stitch these last two together. It's always a skill that we have to touch on.
What's up?
Hey. And so, I hate stuff on the bottom of my feet, man. It's the worst.